My big fears I can't talk about. And my biggest fear is that those fears happen.
16 years after Michael Jackson's death, his ex-wife has finally broken her silence and revealed the whole truth. Million-dollar debts, isolation, addictions, and shocking new confessions. What was Michael hiding about his millionaire addiction? And why did the king of pop die alone and withdrawn from the world? Today, you'll uncover the hidden side of the death of one of the greatest music icons of all time, and who was truly to blame. Talking about pop stars without mentioning Michael Jackson is unthinkable. From the beginning of his journey with his family and the Jackson 5 to his solo career, with which he conquered the world, Michael seemed destined to do everything he did as an artist, since his talent from early on proved to be completely extraordinary. But the truth is, the road was long, with obstacles and an end that was, unfortunately, sad and almost unimaginable when we think of his greatness as the king of pop. It's important to emphasize the word destined in relation to this type of artist because from the start, back in the Jackson 5, Michael demonstrated having a rare gift, being a true vocal prodigy at a young age. Although the group's absolute success came in the 1970s, they had been performing across the United States since the 60s. Upon reaching the top of the charts with songs like ABC, I'll Be There, and I Want You Back, the group became a phenomenon. But the future seemed even more promising. Parallel to this, Michael had begun his solo career in 1971, although initially, the musical group with his family drew more attention at that moment. That is, until the boy's notoriety became so great that he grew in the midst of it and surpassed the group he was part of. With albums released throughout the 70s, his solo career, besides already being a reality, showed signs it would take hold and deliver great things. And what guaranteed this was much more than the albums released in the 80s. Because back in 1979, the album Off the Wall launched Michael into a true worldwide star. Thus, the 80s served to definitively consolidate his title as King of Pop due to landmark albums like Bad from 1987 and the iconic Thriller from 1982, which is to this day the best-selling album in history, with an estimated 110 million copies, being a milestone in the trajectory of world pop music. This, besides being the decade responsible for reaffirming his peak, also marked his official departure from the family group. In 1984, when participating in the Victory Tour, Michael said goodbye to the Jacksons, and the motivation for leaving was obvious. He wanted to dedicate himself 100% to the career that was ascending at that moment. With absolute star status, the artist who was simultaneously brilliant with compositions, voice, dance style, and of course his performance, which combined all these characteristics and delivered them perfectly well on stage, was also a mysterious man. There was something about him that was hard to decipher, something that only made sense with time through his actions. And one of them is tied to his famous ranch, known as Neverland, a property acquired by Michael in 1988, with the intention of creating his own version of a private amusement park, with the name based on the Disney classic Peter Pan, a character that was linked to a possible syndrome the singer may have lived with, since, due to his rigid and somewhat lost childhood, Michael had a certain resistance to growing up in the sense of maturing. His behavior sometimes endorsed this thesis, as well as his friendship with children, since he was always bringing minors to have fun at his amusement park, something that ended up generating distrust and motivating controversies for obvious reasons, something that later caused great unease. Other factors, at minimum curious, also occurred between the late 80s and the 90s, fruits of his eccentric behavior. In the 2000s, more precisely in 2002, Michael lived through a turbulent moment in his career as he decided to appear with his youngest son, Biggie Jackson, at the time 9 months old, dangling in his arms on the balcony of a hotel in Berlin, Germany. Obviously, with the press present, the scene caused alarm in those who witnessed it up close, and scandal for those who could later watch on television. Thus, various criticisms were directed at the pop star, but this was just one more of the controversies Michael got involved in throughout his career. Another much commented on was the drastic change in his skin tone and the excessive surgical interventions that completely changed his face and appearance. As many know today, in the 90s, the singer suffered from a skin disease known as vitiligo and lupus, a condition that caused the loss of his skin pigmentation. He even gave an interview to Oprah Winfrey to talk about the condition, revealing he used makeup and bleaching creams in an attempt to avoid the spots.
Okay, number one, this is the situation. I have a skin disorder that destroys the pigmentation of the skin. It's something that I cannot help, okay? But when people make up stories that I don't want to be who I am, it hurts me.
His case advanced to what's known as universal vitiligo, affecting most of his body, something that was confirmed in the autopsy years later. However, at the time, this radical change in his appearance opened the door for people to talk about him. In response to the comments, at the end of 1991, Michael released the single, Black or White, a direct message to the malicious comments about his change, but which went beyond, as it discussed racial equality. But for a long time, his appearance was the subject of jokes, as Michael underwent several procedures that radically changed his features. That is, he went far beyond, accelerating the change in skin tone, as he had several rhinoplasties whose result ended up becoming artificial. As expected, the public at the time didn't forgive, and thus the artist was the target of harsh criticism, which may have further intensified his non-acceptance of his own appearance. This phase was one of the heaviest to face during his decline, but the worst was yet to come, as Michael still had to face serious accusations and legal proceedings related to involvement with minors. Because yes, the success of the 90s confirmed his legacy as king of pop, but despite that, the 1993 scandal changed a lot, as it attracted a lot of attention and ended up becoming one of the main, or at least the most intriguing and media-covered of that era involving the pop world. This is the case of Jordan Chandler, who, according to accusations made by the minor's father, Michael was accused of inappropriate behavior toward the boy, who was 13 at the time. But an agreement was made between the parties, and the case ended up being closed in 1994, which, in a way, hushed everything up. But the doubt remained in the air. Had Michael been involved with the young man? In 2003, everything came to light, but this time with new accusations. The documentary Living with Michael Jackson showed what, for many, was a bizarre scene in which Michael was holding hands with the boy Gavin Arvizo, at the time only 12 years old. With the documentary on air, new investigations happened by the Los Angeles Department of Children and Family Services. Then Michael was formally accused. In November of that year, Gavin himself told police that Michael had acted inappropriately with him on several occasions. The King of Pop was arrested, but only for one day after posting bail. Subsequently, Michael was indicted on multiple serious allegations involving minors and went to trial in 2005, having as one of his defense witnesses the famous actor Macaulay Culkin, who claimed he was never touched by the pop star the times he slept at his house, as well as Wade Robson, who also testified in favor of Michael, but later changed his story and became one of his accusers. Michael was acquitted in June 2005 of all charges. However, his life and career were never the same, as they were completely overshadowed by the very serious accusations. Michael began avoiding the media and even left the United States for some time. He never returned to his Neverland and also had difficulties resuming his career.
My big fear is I can't talk about. And my biggest fear is that those fears happen.
Away from the cameras, Michael faced the phase of decline, but decided to surprise the public once more by overcoming the scandals once and for all, and in 2009, announcing a series of shows in England that would mark the beginning of his farewell tour. This is it. Tragically, none of the shows came to happen, as Michael Jackson died on June 25, 2009, at 50 years old, victim of cardiac arrest. The news of the sudden departure caught the whole world by surprise, as things seemed to be returning to their proper places, and the public was seeing him with good eyes again, already waiting for the shows and the news. The period before his death was marked by excessive work with many rehearsals for the newly announced tour and filled with stress and worries about the debts Michael began accumulating. Few know this, but it's estimated the artist owed something around $500 million due to shopping addiction. These debts, according to those closest to him, were pushing him to the limit. Additionally, Michael was addicted to medications, so he used various medications daily for chronic pain and to be able to sleep at night. Later, it was proven that the rampant use of these substances, which ended up causing his death, occurred due to medical negligence, as Dr. Conrad Murray, his personal physician, who would even sleep at his mansion, ended up being convicted to prison for the singer's death. This is because Michael suffered cardiac arrest caused by an excessive amount of medication taken under his doctor's supervision.
Rowe broke down on the witness stand today, describing Jackson as a victim of doctors competing over a celebrity patient. Quote, Michael respected doctors immensely. Unfortunately, some of the doctors decided that when Michael was in pain that they would try to outdo each other. Who could give the better drug? Unquote. Rowe identified the doctors as Klein and plastic surgeon Stephen Heflin.
The ex-wife and mother of two of the singer's three children, Debbie Rowe, declared when participating in the documentary Who Really Killed Michael Jackson that, in a way, she blamed herself for her ex-husband's death because besides being aware that Michael faced this addiction, she believed she could have helped more but ended up not doing much. Debbie and Michael were married from 1996 to 1999 and together had children Michael Joseph Jackson Jr. and Paris Jackson.
I was trying to console him because he was really upset. And he was upset that, he said he really wanted to be a dad. And I said, so be a dad. And he looked at me puzzled. And I said, let me do this. I said, you need to be a dad. I want to do this. And nagged him into it, if you will.
With the star's death, Debbie, who was no longer part of the will, was also separated from her children, since legal custody ended up with Katherine Jackson, the singer's mother, as well as the administration of assets, which were passed to third parties.
Like, for instance, that he wanted his mother, Katherine, to be guardian of his children. The biggest, that Debbie Rowe, the mother of his older two children, is out.
Later, Debbie got an agreement in court that allowed her to visit her children. Additionally, over time and while treating cancer, Debbie Rowe also managed to get closer to the young adults, even after some years apart. Despite being in debt upon dying, Michael left a fortune valued in the billions of dollars, but which to this day is still the subject of legal dispute, as it's something absolutely complex involving his mother, his children, the estate administrators, and even the IRS. In a somewhat more summarized way, on one side, there are Paris Jackson's challenges regarding improper estate spending. On the other, the IRS says the estate undervalued assets, generating a multi-million-dollar debt and, undoubtedly, being the biggest obstacle in this true legal battle that has dragged on in the final distribution of assets since taxes were not properly reviewed and paid, besides, of course, other issues involving the singer's mother. Now, 16 years after the artist's death, the legal impasse continues without resolution, and the beneficiaries remain without any access to the estate left by Michael, and they'll stay that way until everything is properly resolved. But the time period is indeterminate. In more recent news, more precisely from August 2024, a California appeals court approved the sale of half of the artist's catalog to Sony Music. The estate had been valued at $600 million and was prevented from being sold due to an objection from the singer's mother, claiming such a sale would not be her son's wish. Currently, Michael's heirs lead very different lives. Prince Jackson, as far as is known, dedicates himself to philanthropy and the audiovisual sector. Paris Jackson entered the artistic world, following her father's example. She became a model, actress, and singer. Meanwhile, the youngest, Biggie Jackson, leads a more reclusive life away from the spotlight. Debbie Rowe, mother of Paris and Prince, lives a quiet life in California, where she runs a horse ranch. The identity of Biggie's mother, to this day, is unknown. Now, almost 2 decades since his sudden departure, Michael Jackson left a legion of devastated fans and theories about his death, including even the hypothesis that he's still alive. But regardless of any theory, his legacy lives on, and his work will continue with us for a long time. It's true that his name is still linked to accusations from the past and some old controversies that make him a controversial figure, because even after all these years, some of them are still brought up and discussed in the media. as is the case with the 2019 documentary Leaving Neverland, which resurrected allegations involving minors, including statements from Wade Robson, a witness at the 2005 trial, who years later decided to claim he was one of the artist's victims on several occasions during childhood and adolescence. In 2013, Wade decided to sue the singer's estate based on the accusations made. The documentary generated outrage in the family, who claimed not a single piece of evidence from his side was presented. Despite everything, the fact is that to this day, Michael Jackson remains one of the most influential people of recent decades for his work and art, became a legend, and even with everything that happened, didn't lose his title as king. Do you think people took advantage of Michael's innocence? Which song of his impacted you the most? Tell me in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. I've got a video like this one that you'll really enjoy. It's showing up on your screen right now. See you there.